Wonderful. All right. I don't want to take up too much of your time today because I would like for you guys to be able to get some time in doing your packet and your study guide. As you can see, it's here. The one thing that I would suggest today, because I'm going to only talk for about the first 15 minutes, and then I would have you guys make sure that you have both of your lecture questions done for this week. So Monday, Tuesday, and we'll do our participation points here in a second. So we will get to this Unit 2 review, but first I do want to tell you about the test because I finalized it yesterday. It is 27 questions. That gives you about a minute and a half per question to finish it in the class period, but I have it open for 90 minutes. So if you need the extended time, it is there. And it is 68 points. That is a good chunk of change for your last grade on your quarter one. So I will put this on quarter one so we can wrap up quarter one nice and neat and then be done with that. Okay. Everything on the review sheet's fair game. And what I mean about that is that I sat down with the test and I said, question number 1 out of 27, is it somewhere on the review sheet? Yes. Question number 2 on the test, is it somewhere on the review sheet? Yes. So if it's found on the review sheet, that means it's fair game for the test. If it's not on the review sheet, like one thing that I just took off were conversions. Everybody hates doing the good old like inches to kilometers, stuff like that. You will not see any conversions on there, okay? There will be some math with the density, and there will be significant figures in your final answer, but I'm not going to ask you like, tell me how many sig figs is in this absolute number. I think you needed to be applying your significant figures by now, okay? I tried to write a few questions that are going to make you think. So not everything is just like, what is density? Blah, you know, like not all of it's just rote memorization. Some of it is going to make you apply. So some of them you might be like, well, I didn't exactly learn that, but you can go ahead and apply your knowledge, okay? You guys will take it in here during the period. If you are at home, you'll take it between 7:30 and 1:30. That is when it is open, okay? I suggest tomorrow that you have a blank piece of paper and a pencil and a calculator. There is a calculator in the test if you need, so no worries if you don't have one. But you might want a piece of paper too, like if you're drawing a density column or doing a density problem. If you like using paper better, I suggest that. Then, upon our talking to some people at our staff meeting last night, what I ended up doing is I would like to collect some feedback on kind of how the year is going so far. So it's not going to actually be in the actual test itself because I don't want to take up your time. You know, you have 45 minutes to take this test. But also, if you would like, I will give you 2 points extra credit. That means you can miss one question and it will completely go away. If you go in and you take a survey, okay? And if you take the survey, it is completely anonymous. The link externally will be anonymous, and then you'll just say, yes, I took the survey, and then you'll do that. So you do not have to do it for the test. But if you do it anonymously, I will then I'll put it in PowerSchool. So it will say no points for this. You'll see it, but I'll put it into PowerSchool, okay? I'll give you 2 extra credit points on your test last thing of the quarter, and then it will be all complete, okay? So that's kind of what we're going to be doing as far as the test goes. So again, it's 27 questions. I'm sorry, 68 points. And then you will have everything you're looking at on the review sheet. So what I want to do very quickly before I turn you over to just doing the review sheet today, the page before the review sheet is a concept map. Let's have everybody get that bad boy in front of you. Concept map. If you can follow along and you say, yep, I know that. I got it. Yes. That means you are good for this test today. So I'm going to fill this in with you. I mean, good for the test tomorrow. And so let's see how we're doing. Okay. This whole unit was about matter. And in that, we know that matter is anything that has mass and takes up volume. Anything that has mass and takes up volume. Awesome. Anything that has mass and takes up volume. Then, at the very beginning of the unit, we talked about 3 different pieces or parts of that matter. We talked about the types of matter, types. We talked about the changes matter can undergo. And we talked about the properties that matter would have. Okay, awesome. Let's start with types because that's what we started with 4 weeks ago at the very beginning here. We said that matter breaks down into 2 main pieces. And the first main type of matter is called a pure substance. Pure substances. Pure substances. The first type of pure substance is everything off of the periodic table over there. It is the most basic form of matter, the most basic building blocks, and those are called elements. You will have those little pictures again on the test where you say, oh, that looks like that's an element from a microscopic view and all that kind of good stuff as well. Okay. If you have 2 or more elements chemically joined, that is a compound. A compound. And those are your 2 types of pure substances. Okay. Perfect. And if I'm going too fast or you have a question, please interject here, or I'm just rolling along. If you don't have a pure substance, then you have a mixture. That means one or more things are together, but they are physically combined. Perfect. If you cannot see the parts, that's homogeneous. If you can see the parts, that is heterogeneous. Okay, and remember, you can separate mixtures. We did talk about that, but I'm going to try to go in the order that we learned everything. So we're going to come back to the rest of this column in a second. So hopefully all that stuff you're feeling reviewed. You're like, yes, I got that. Awesome. Another thing that we started with at the beginning of the unit is we talked about changes. If you have a physical change, you will not make any new matter. You are just changing size or texture or size, shape, texture, temperature, stuff like that. If you do make new matter, that's called a chemical change. You might want to go over the different pieces of evidence of a chemical and a physical change. I just couldn't fit everything on this concept map. Okay, but you might want to make sure you're looking into that you can identify what a chemical versus a physical change is. Beautiful. And you have some practice with that on your worksheet. Then we talked about properties of matter. There are physical and chemical properties of matter. Physical properties of matter you can tell with your senses. It's the color of something. It's the size of something. It's the density of something. If you can collect information about it without changing that object chemically, that's a physical property. Chemical properties are the potential to undergo a chemical change. So if something's flammable or reacts with water or reacts with hydrochloric acid, then probably the 2 harder ones that are brand new, probably for chemistry only, would be if it is a property that does not change with size, that is intensive. If that is a property that does not change with amount, that is intensive. And if it does change with amount, that is extensive. You will have a question or 2 on that, so make sure you do know that. That is something that usually students need to study. Awesome. Okay. Then we spend some time talking about density. You will have a few density problems. You'll also have some density, understanding what sinks, what floats, all that kind of good stuff. Density, the mathematical formula is mass over volume. Density is mass over volume. And let's talk about some units. The unit for mass is grams. The unit for volume is different. If you have a liquid or a solid, you either have milliliters for your liquid or centimeters cubed for your solid. Okay, and remember, density is just how much stuff in the given space. So that has to have a compound unit where you have one of each. So the unit for density, and so you might want to draw some arrows. Mass unit there, volume unit here, density unit is down here. That's either grams per milliliter or grams per centimeter cubed. Okay. Awesome. You will have to know that the density of water is 1. And if things are less dense, do they sink or float? If they're less dense, they float. Very good. Oops. So I did that upside down. But if it sinks, it's more dense. If it floats, it's less dense. So if you have like a column, you would have to be able to tell me that the less dense thing is on top and the more dense thing is on the bottom. And there is some practice on that on the review sheet as well. All right. So we got all that business with density. We spent like a whole week on density. So that's all that. Then just recently, we talked about the different ways to separate mixtures. There are 4 ways to separate mixtures. The first way is separating based on boiling point, which is distillation. Distillation is separating based on boiling point. Solubility, you do it in the morning when you're making your coffee, is filtration. Remember, it only stops insoluble things. Okay, you cannot filter out anything that's soluble. While we're here, let's just take a moment. The word solubility, soluble means it does dissolve. Insoluble means it does not dissolve. So filtration only works on things that are insoluble. And one thing that we made a few times here that we said it's a very specific chemistry thing is a precipitate. A precipitate is insoluble, and it's a solid that falls out of solution. Okay. Wonderful. Let me know if I went a little too quick for you there. Good, good, good. All right. The rest of our ways, if you're going to separate based on density and solubility, that is centrifuge. Centrifuge also only works on insoluble things. Can't remember when you're thinking about it, remember the green food coloring. It did not spin the green food coloring out, so therefore you're only allowed to have insoluble substances. Centrifuge. And the last one's color. We didn't use it a lot, but I would know its definition. It separates based on color. That's chromatography. Perfect. You guys are hanging with me awesome here. Last 2 things. We talked about if you have a chemical reaction, you write A plus B. That little arrow means to yield. The little arrow means to yield. C plus D. The name of the things that you begin with are called the reactants. Those are called the reactants. And the things that you make are called the products. So your reactants react to yield your products. I can guarantee you'll see some of that as well. Then the last thing we talked about at the end of the day yesterday, if you have 10 grams of your reactants, you surely better have 10 grams of your product, whether it's on the scale or not, because of the law of conservation of mass. Okay? Matter cannot be created. Matter cannot be destroyed. It can change forms. You just can't destroy it. You would have to be able to tell me where that went. So if you want more practice with that, we kind of ended with the worksheet that says matter, bell work number 2. And you guys can do that. It was on your single page now that I think about it. Okay. So with that said, this is pretty much the main gist. There are a few supporting details that are not on here that you're going to have to do when you go through your review sheet. But if you can look at that and say, yes, I'm feeling all that business, you're going to be doing well on the test tomorrow if you do your review sheet and your study. Okay. So we have your review sheet. That's going to be the next thing we're going to do here. I also would like for you to do another thing. I'd like for you to open up your Chromebook. I got a new participation points quiz. So if you go into week 8 on Wednesday, week 8 on Wednesday, there's just a new question here. Now that we're back. Questions. It just says, how did you earn your participation points this week? Did you come to class Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? You're going to check all that apply. And then you're going to submit that. Okay, and then I'll just cross-reference that with my attendance. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the remainder of the period. I'm going to walk around, see if you guys have any questions. But also in Wednesday's class, once you're done with your participation points, if you don't have the key, the parent packet with you, the answer key is also online. So if you want to check yourself, I suggest you do the whole front and then check yourself and then do the whole back and then check yourself. So you can use your note packet. You can use the concept map we just filled out, but you have a test tomorrow that is going to be 27 questions. Okay, and 68 points. Do we have any questions before I turn the last 20 minutes over to you guys? Yeah. All right, so you have about 23 minutes to yourselves. Does everybody have a copy of the review sheet? We're feeling good. The other thing, I don't know if I should do it now or later. I do have the packet for the next unit. This goes almost until Thanksgiving, so it is quite large. Please don't lose this. I'm getting yelled at for all the paper I'm using. So if you feel like you want this now, you can take this now if you don't think you're going to be here tomorrow. But I also understand if you're like, look, I'll get it tomorrow. You people at home, I'll give this to you on Monday because we start our thermochem unit, and it is a challenging unit. We start the thermochem unit on Monday. Okay, but let's get through this test tomorrow first, and it will go on quarter 1, just so you know. Okay, so you guys are looking at your packet here. Unit 2 matter review. Let's do that review, my friends. I'll turn the music on quietly, and I'm going to come around and see how you're doing. Beautiful. Let's see who's here. I'm not here.